The constituency of West Rural St. Andrew in Jamaica is one of the battleground seats. Recent trends suggest that whichever party wins that constituency goes on to win the general election. So a lot of focus will be on it whenever the Prime Minister calls the next election. The defending champion, the MP in that constituency, is Juliet Cuthbert Flynn. She's an Olympian, she's a mother, and she's a wife. And as things stand on this day in sports, the PNP have declared that Crystal Tomlinson, the PNP YO president, is the person who will be put forward to challenge her at the polls. It's a big race, two women not too far apart, but representing different generations, and it will be a battle royal, one suspects. My guest today, Juliet Cuthbert Flynn, to talk about West Rural St. Andrew and other matters concerning governance and her time so far as a member of parliament. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
it's a pleasure to be here.
You stood me up once and I was left sitting and wondering what it is that I had done wrong, you know. Everybody as I asked say yes the first time, but you said no, but you're back.
I'm back.
Have you here.
I had to come back.
There you go. So before we get into constituency matters, you came in as one of the first-time candidates in 2016, February 25, 2016, those elections. You did not have any experience in representational politics before, and you were going into a seat. It was an acid test. Paul Buchanan was the sitting member of parliament there, and it is a seesaw constituency, as I said in the opening, a battleground. And there were persons who doubted whether you had the mettle to pull it off. But you did, 2,000 plus votes clear. What has life as an MP been since February 25, 2016? Life
as an MP is, it has been good and it has been bad. Mm-hmm. You know, it's no matter how much you prepare yourself or no matter how much what people tell you, once you get in, it's different. Mm-hmm. And so people could forewarn you and say, look out for this, look out for that. But sometimes it gets a little challenging, a little overwhelming, because you don't have, no matter what you want to do, sometimes you have to, you know, there's red tape to get things done. And so some of that is very challenging because you want to get things done. I am that kind of a person. And it doesn't happen when you want to get it done. So those things are challenging. But I'm enjoying it. I'm representing the people. In my other life, track and field, I think I was one of the athletes who spoke out a lot for athletes' rights, or, you know, when things are not going right.
Yes.
I was never afraid to speak out, and I think I carried that into the political arena to make sure that I speak up for the people. Once I walked around West Rural, and I campaigned for a good 14 months before the election. And I saw the needs and I understood how the people felt, coming also from a background of, you know, a place in St. Thomas in Port Morant.
Yes.
I grew up in a rural part of Jamaica also. So I understood the plight. I understood what the people were saying, some of the needs that they, you know, wanted to see happen and was just not happening. And I think because I have a passion for my country, I love my country, Jamaica, that's why I returned. I wanted to see better for these people, and I knew I had the voice to actually speak out for them and get the things done. And I'm doing a pretty decent job, I think, so far.
One of the things that MPs find difficult, especially those new to politics, representational kind, is the vision that they would have sold to supporters in the campaign. That vision is usually difficult to realize once they get in because of the red tape you mentioned. And so you would have said, look, when we get in, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But when you get in, because of the bureaucracy, you find out that it's difficult to do this and to do that. How do you then reforecast the minds of those who would have supported you on certain principles by saying that, look, I know I promised this, but it won't happen now. I know I said I was going to do this, but I don't think it can happen at all. How have you found that process?
And you know, what you just said is what you're supposed to do. And a lot of people don't trust politicians. And so, you know, they saw Juliet Cuthbert the runner.
Yes.
And so they trusted me. And one thing I never did was make promises. I said, I'll do what I can. I'll make sure I go in and I will represent you. And I think I've stuck with that. A lot of people don't like my honesty. They call me feisty. It's really just, I'm very plain and straight, and I'm going to tell you like it is. It may not come off too good sometimes, but I like to be honest, and I like to explain to the people, because I think that's one of the things also that politicians don't do a good job at. They don't sit and explain to persons how things work.
Yes.
And so they don't know. And you not knowing, you're going to come out and you're going to bash the member of parliament. So once you sit and explain, they go, thank you, Ms. Juliet, for explaining that. No, I understand. So I think it's really about being honest with the people and explain to them the process, because they don't understand the process. And I didn't really understand the process myself before I got into politics and know you have to do this and, you know, go through these different doors to get things done.
Yes.
And so I think once you're honest with the people, they're okay with it.
Yes.
And so I haven't had much of a challenge, because I think one of the main challenges for West Rural St. Andrew was really road and water. And of course, I found a lot of young people not having much of a skill to really gain employment. And also, what I found were a lot of youths who had subjects, and they did not have the financial backing or the know-how to get to the university level. And so those were the main problems of West Rural: water and infrastructure.
I divide up, for my own purposes, being a student of politics, to always be able to recall the 4 main divisions in West Rural St. Andrew. I break it down simple. I say 3 hills and a tavern. Red Hills, Brandon Hills, Stony Hill, and of course Lawrence Tavern.
Right.
Yeah. So across these 4 divisions, Juliet, what have you found insofar as the immediate needs of the people beyond roads and water? Or is it that everywhere it's about road and water? Give me road, give me water.
All right, so let's do that. Stony Hill, it's really about roadways, infrastructure. It's really about development of that town. And Stony Hill, I'm sure you've driven, even if you're not going to Stony Hill, going to Portland, going to St. Mary, you have to drive through that small little town area. And it's a mess. And so my vision to develop Stony Hill right there in the center, I have a vision to develop it, and it's going to happen.
What's that vision?
The first thing is to fix up Stony Hill Square.
Yes. Stony
Hill Square is an awful mess. It's very congested. And what I find, just us being in Jamaica, when when things are not going right, especially when you're on the road and there's chaos just makes you get, and you then lash out at somebody, and then there's some violent act. And I think that is what's happening to the Stony Hill Square. There's a crosswalk right at the 4-way stop. I don't know who put that there. It's not supposed to be there. The buses coming in from Tavern or from St. Mary, they double park. So there's no law and order. And I want to see better law and order in that little section. There is a sign right as you're getting into Stony Hill, as you pass the church, St. Jude's.
Yes.
And there's a sign that says no dumping. And there are people literally dumping garbage. When you see garbage pile up, people literally are dumping garbage there. So I want to clean up that section of Stony Hill, and also put in some other infrastructure, and I've started doing some of those things. When you look at Stony Hill, does not have a water problem, because the water is coming way from the hills up in Langley coming down, so they have good water system in Stony Hill. Take us over to Brandon Hill.
Yes.
Brandon Hill is where the water is really coming from, but we need to update some of those pipes to get to the people. And it's not that bad, but people do get water in the Brandon Hill area. The problem that Brandon Hill was having was also infrastructure. It's really an enclosed kind of, and Brandon Hill is very large, by the way.
Yes.
So when you get into the Mount James section and the New Garden section, and also in Brandon Hill itself, is very much enclosed. Road infrastructure has been a problem, an issue. I mean, I had to change tires after tires after tires. In a year, I've changed tires up to 2 times for the year. When you get into the Lawrence Tavern, Again, it's really water. Water is their issue. Road infrastructure too, but water is a cry. That's what the people talk about all the time, and we are working on those things right now. We've actually put some things in place.
Yes.
When you get over to Red Hills,
yes.
Red Hills is more of a roadway infrastructure, not just not really the main road so much, even though we're going to be working on that, because you have a really nice stretch of a kind of mini highway from Red Hill Square into the Rock Hall going into Sligoville.
Yes.
But you have the interior roads that are really bad, that need some attention. Of course, you know, the councils don't get a lot of funding,
yes.
so that's where the MP must now step in, and we're trying to mitigate that. As far as the water, only in the Coopers Hill area, most times because of the pressure of the water and where it's coming from, that has been a problem, and somewhat in Cypress Hall. And so in all the 4 divisions, you have different problems, but again, Lawrence Tavern, water is the main issue.
Within the constituency, you have pockets, as every constituency does, I may say. But you have parts of your constituency where there are very wealthy people living. And then you have parts where the people are really struggling. And you speak about the road. Some places you can't drive, and it's
You're
a
right.
fact. And so how do you, is it that the base needs of those in the wealthy, plush areas coincide with those of the people who live in the challenging areas, or are they, you know, different segments have different needs? So what's that situation?
You only really find that in the Stony Hill area. So you will find wealthy people living in a section, but you have to go through a somewhat of a depressed area to get to the wealthy. And that's a couple sections in the Stony Hill area. So you don't find that, but when you get into the Lawrence Tavern and into the Brandon Hill, it's not so. It's really working class people, you have farmers, yes. and you know, a lot of people in the working world that are not wealthy, but they're working Jamaicans.
What percentage of your constituents would you say are tertiary educated?
You know, I've never really.
But is it high?
It's. I would say maybe in the Stony Hill, Lawrence Tavern has a good percentage, and the Red Hills area, but we still have a large percentage without the skill, without that college education. And I think that's where I'm pushing so far with the CDF. Every year I try to do at least 50. I can only do 50 with $3 million. I do 50 grants for college students. And so we heard the Prime Minister the other day talking about looking at the CDF. So I'm hoping that he will improve as far as the funding, yes. and maybe we can put more money into college education. You know, it is a good percentage of students, yes. I would say, that need to be in college or getting some sort of a skill training.
Hear you on that. We're talking about West Rural St. Andrew. Of course, Juliet Cuthbert Flynn is the Member of Parliament, and we're just laying the foundation for the conversation. Much more after these.